Last week, we got busy removing the bulls from the cows, and my God did they cause a ruckus when we decided to chuck them all in together. But this week, with a little bit of moisture and some sunshine around, it was time for us to try and make the grass grow.
We have a dry day that is not windy, which this week has been a bit of a rarity. It's been crazy windy and crazy wet, which I'm not complaining about at all because it's got the grass growing. But because we want to keep the grass growing, look what we've got. We've got the tone fert on the beautiful 6410. So we're going to go chuck a little bit of nitrogen on and try and keep things moving forward because whilst it's growing, we got to keep it growing, haven't we? We actually chucked the tone fert on because we had a blocked drain and we needed the tone fert to blast out because it's got that volume hose that I'd never used before, but yeah, there's some volume comes out of that. I tell you, it's awesome. So we've used the volume hose up the drain to clear the drain out. We've got the drain running now, but I've got tone fert on ready because now we can go and get some fert on. I know there'll be a lot of people out there thinking that it's probably a little bit late for fertilizer, but you know, there's a couple of things with the tone fert that puts you in a bit of an advantage. Firstly, because we're using the tone fert, we're 93% efficient as opposed to like 40-ish% efficient. You'd probably be about 45% efficient this time of year, especially with it being quite dry in the ground. Anyway, because we're 93% efficient, we have to put less on. So because we're putting less on, it's more cost effective to do it. And because of the conversion rate, currently, it's actually not working out too bad. I actually probably should head to the whiteboard and try and explain conversion rate on grass growth because I think it's one of those things that people don't really understand. So we'll do that. Okay, so in order to explain this, I've attempted to draw a graph. Now this graph is slightly complicated because we've got 3 axes, because we've got 2 lines to draw on here, but hopefully I'll be able to explain it and it will make sense when we're done. Over here, we've got dry matter response for every kilogram of nitrogen applied. Along the bottom, we've gone January to December. And then up this side, we've got the cost per kilogram of dry matter growth. Obviously, for those of you who are watching who are not in Europe, this will be slightly different because if you're in Southern Hemisphere, to start off with, your growing season's different. If you are in more extreme weathers, like Canada, whatever, in the Northern Hemisphere, your lines when they're put on will just be closer together. But this is just generally for mainly Britain and, you know, Central Europe. So the first line we're going to plot, I'm going to put in green because it's about your grass growth. The dry matter response tends to follow the pattern of grass growth throughout the year. So you're going to start with very low grass growth. As you get towards May, it's going to peak. It will then come back down through June, July, and then peak again in September before dropping off towards the end of the year. If you look at any grass growth curve, that's pretty much what it does on an average year. It kind of looks exactly like that. And the reason for this is because fertilizer is not equal throughout the whole year. At certain times of year, if your growing conditions are better, your response to fertilizer will be better. So during May in particular, you might get 25, even 30 kilograms of dry matter response for every kilo that you spread. But at the beginning of the year, it might be 10 or 15. And then as we come towards August, it tends to drop off again before picking up in September for a short period and then dropping off for the rest of the year. The things that change that are soil temperature, the amount of moisture that's in the soil, the amount of moisture that's in the atmosphere, the day length, all of those things have a huge response on how grass actually takes up nitrogen. And the other thing that we've noticed in this year, obviously drought has a big difference too, because in that point we have no response because we have no moisture. And moisture, it does not matter whether you're doing granular fertilizer, foliar fertilizer, liquid fertilizer, it makes no difference. If you don't have moisture, you're not going to get any uptake. Now, plotting on in red, I'm just going to show you how the cost per kilogram of dry matter growth will change throughout the year. And we're talking here in kilograms of nitrogen, so it doesn't matter what your product is, whether it's urea, ammonia of nitrate, whatever. Obviously, the kilogram cost per kilo of nitrogen you will have to work out for yourself. But how that works is when you apply it in January, because your response is low, the cost per kilogram of growth is really high. And then as you come throughout the year, it will cross over. And then once we get that cross point, we're now starting to be in the money. It will drop down like this, and then it will peak again in that August. When you start to have that slower growth, it starts to peak. It will then come back down before rising again towards the end of the year. So all the time that red line is below the green line, it is cost effective to spread fertilizer. All the time that it is above, it is not worth your while. We'll have 2 points, one earlier in the year and one later in the year, when that fertilizer point switches and it's just not worth that extra effort. But at the moment, we're probably in the year somewhere around here. So at the moment, for us, it's worthwhile doing. And the one benefit that we have with foliar over granular is because if we look at grass like this, and we have then everything below the soil, when we apply a granular, if it is an ammonium nitrate, we'll have a response at contact for it to melt down and change and go into the soil. If we are spreading urea, there is actually response at contact. There is another change that happens in the soil before take up, which is why urea takes around 3 weeks to actually get into the plant if you spread it granular. If we come along with our foliar, that goes straight onto the leaf, and the response is about 3 hours, you'll take up about 50%. And I think it's 6 hours, it's 90% or something like that. So within 6 hours, the vast majority, 90% of your urea has gone into the plant and it's now working. Another fun fact for you that I learned today as well, if you spread urea granular and you put it onto the surface of the soil, if you do not have 10 mil of rain within 24 hours of spreading that urea, you lose over 50% to the atmosphere. So you're just throwing your money away, which is another reason why we went down the foliar route. Okay, so now we've got that cleared up, we need to get this girl filled up. That's sucking beautiful. I often leave this pipe here for filling up, but I had to take it back to use the volume hose. That thing is an absolute weapon. I am in love with that. While she's filling up though, I'm just going to point this out. We're next to that Herbal lay that we drilled in the spring, and it was undersown. Look at that. Undersown. No, it wasn't undersown. It was kind of undersown in Fat Hen, but it wasn't undersown. It was just under all that Fat Hen. We cleared it up. Look at it go now. It's absolutely chock-a-block full of clover, plantain, everything. Woo! Getting there. We want to get to about 1100-ish. Oh God, what have I done? Oh no. There we go. We're back. So whilst we're on the subject of herbal lays, has anybody listened to Michael Blanch's podcast called Cows and Effect? It's kind of Pasture Pod adjacent, if you know him from Pasture Pod. Bloody brilliant. Michael Blanch is just a comedy genius. He and a guy called Paul Allison look at scientific papers and then they discuss them, but in layman's terms so you can understand them. Sounds so incredibly boring, but it's actually brilliant. It's so good, it's just really entertaining. But they were talking about herbal lays on there, and they were saying about herbal lays on a low to no fertilizer system. If you got the right mixture of grasses and herbs so that they work in symbiosis, there's a lot of red clover especially. Red clover is very good, it turns out. But if you've got the right mixture of grasses and herbs and legumes, you produce more grass than you will off of a high input perennial or Italian ryegrass system. Absolutely fascinating. They explain all the papers. It's well worth going and having a listen, even just for the entertainment value, because they are funny people. Anyway, the reason why I bring up about the podcast is because they were talking about the grazing and mowing of herbal lays in some scientific papers. And what was really interesting is they were talking about how if you get the right mixture of plants, which were, Timothy was one of them, which is a grass species, red clover was another, having plantain in there was another one, but having the right sort of plants that work well together, they actually had a response that was far greater than some of their parts. In maths, 1 + 1 is 2, and it's always 2. You can't have 1 + 1 is something else. But in science, 1 + 1 can equal 4. If you have a grass species or a plantain or a red clover or whatever that has the ability to produce 7,000 tons of dry matter on its own in a single species sward, when you combine them together, that same amount of total production might be 13,500 tons, because the way that they work together actually makes all of them better. Honestly, it's fascinating. It's the kind of thing that proper floats my boat. Anyway, we're adding in humates because anything that's not utilised needs to be retained. We're going to throw in some Epsom salts to try and improve nitrogen utilisation, so we're not wasting anything really there. And then finally, we've got this, the urea. Wait, I need to think about this. We're going to do 10 kilograms of nitrogen to the hectare, so that is about 150. I'll do. There we go, she'll do. We haven't got a huge amount of urea left in the shed, only 2 or 3 bags, which is good news, because actually what we're trying to do is trying to have a clear out so we can have a fresh batch next year, because we've had this 2 or 3 years now and it's going a bit hard, but we want to try something different. There's a Yara product called, I think it's Amidas. There's 2, there's Amidas and Amitras, I think, or something like that. But we want, one is a compound, which means that it's a mixture of urea, but it might be ammonium nitrate, can't remember, but it's a mixture of the nitrogen product and sulfur. And the other one is a mix, so it's some nitrogen and some sulfur. But we want the compound product that's together because it's the perfect mixture of nitrogen and sulfur, so we won't have to use Epsom salts, and it'll give us better nitrogen utilisation on our grassland. And it's only about £10 per tonne at the minute, more than straight urea. So it's actually would work out more cost effective for a better product that will grow more grass. So that's what we're thinking about having. So yeah, check that stuff out, because that's some good stuff. So other than the obvious trying to grow more grass, for those of you who are wondering what the technical reasons behind why we're trying to grow more grass, I'm going to let you know. So our average farm cover right now is sat at about 2,006 kilograms of dry matter per hectare. So that's the whole farm lumped in and split out over the whole acreage. We really need it to be somewhere between 2,200 and 2,400 before we start last rotation around the beginning of October, and then shutting up, create a grass wedge for next spring. So the goal is to grow as much grass as we can now, whilst the utilisation rate is good, whilst the conversion rate is good, so that when we come to the 1st of October and we start to periodically do that last rotation, shut grass up, slow cows down with hay, whatever else we're doing, we'll actually end up with the farm in a good position to turn out in the spring. So we're really trying to think ahead now and plan for next year, because this year's been a load of rubbish. We must chuck that out the door and just pretend it didn't happen. But we can do some stuff now which is going to have a positive effect on the future. So it's just forward planning, really. That's what we're trying to do. Okay, whilst we're on the graph hype, just to explain to you when I'm talking about average farm cover, what our farm cover is the amount of grass that we've got across our whole farm on average. But I want to just explain how we're trying to build farm covers. So considering the success of the last graph, I've decided to do another one. Growth is in green, demand is in red. Demand is the amount of grass that we need to maintain our stock every single day, and growth is the amount of grass that we're producing every single day. If we have grass growth below the amount that we need to eat, our average farm cover will drop because we're having to eat what we've got in stock. So putting on our fertilizer hopefully will build the amount of grass growth that we've got. If we can then match the amount of demand with grass growth, then we're not going to build farm cover, but we'll also maintain our farm cover. But our goal with adding the extra fertilizer is that we end up in this position on the end, where we have growth that exceeds demand, and therefore the average farm cover will build, and we'll go into the last rotation with a heap of grass that we can eat and manage to hopefully set ourselves up for the spring. Now here's one for the foliar fans. I'm not sure if you can see it, but you can see it with the naked eye. Yesterday, I came doing a bit of tone fert yesterday morning. I started at the centre fence over there and I worked this way across the field. And then I got waylaid, something cropped up and I never got back. And I came back this morning to finish it. And what has amazed me is you can see where I got to. So I got across the field and I actually finished about here. I'll jump up on the tractor, you might be able to see it a bit better from above. But I went to there and I went round what was this mucky bottom here, and I went round it. So I've driven around here and you can actually see a line about there above my finger that kind of comes round and goes down to this corner. I'll stand on there and I'll show you. I don't know if you can see it. Now it's the same mix as what I put in for everything else, and it's the same mix as what I'm doing this morning, but just 24 hours further on, and it's just crazy. I mean, like I said, I don't know if you can see it on the video, but you can see it really clearly with the naked eye. You might be able to see it a bit better now. So it kind of comes down, that's where I started this morning, that light track. So it comes down halfway between the two there, and it gets to about the middle of the screen now, and comes around here. In hindsight, it would have probably been much easier for me to have filmed this before I finished spreading on the field, because it was a lot easier to see without the tracks. You live and you learn, don't you? But what I'm trying to say is 24 hours and you could see how that nitrogen had just been picked up and the plant was greener, it was lusher. I'm not saying it was longer, but it was just primed and ready to go. You could just see it in the plant. And I can see it now, looking at the field. I can see it, I don't know if it comes across, but it bloody amazes me the speed that this thing takes up. And some of the fields that we did earlier in the week and at the end of last week are just off, they're just gone. And it's great. I mean, this time of year to have that reaction to some fertilizer, it just makes you feel good, especially when we've had the year we've had. We are having a few colder mornings, hence the little jumper I've got on, because I guess time of year you just get them, don't we? We're getting high pressure coming in, that means some colder mornings. But we're having some nice days. Now those colder mornings are going to drop the soil temperature a little bit, that's inevitable, but I'd like to think that, you know, with everything else that's going on with foliar and the fact that time of year we're still having some warm middle of the days, but it's going to take a lot of cold mornings to really significantly put a drop in the soil temperature. I think we're at about 14 degrees right now, so it's still pretty good really. We still haven't got round to raking up that fat hen that we managed to mow the other week because it's been so wet, but I think when we get there this afternoon, rake that up and get it tidy and then leave it in a swath to dry out for a day or two. But look at that, look at the regrowth in there, man. Bale unroller is officially out. We have now mobbed up all the cows at home. So they're all in one group, the cows and the calves. And that's about 160-ish, maybe just over 160 all together in one big group. We look like a dairy farm, we do, but with the wrong kind of cows. My brother come down the road the other day and he was like, there's a lot of cows in them fields. I was like, yep. Looks good. But we've been slowing them down on rotation by giving them a bale of hay. If you want a bale and roller, these things are amazing. They're worth their weight in gold. They're so good. And we use it all the time. And we've got a pipe winder as well. You've probably seen it where we use for unwinding pipes for troughs and whatever else. And when we've been putting pipes under the ground, we've been able to pull it in with the mole and unwind it off there at the same time. Brilliant bit of kit. If you want a bale and roller, Google bale and roller. Actually go to the link in the description down below. You can go into it there. Tom Berger makes them. They are bomb-proof. You will find them cheaper, probably, but you will not find them better. This thing will last forever. It's all galvanized, and this is like the top of the range with all the wheel kit and the lights and everything. They're brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Go and buy one. But we are using hay to try and slow down rotation a little bit. So we're just dropping a bale in every day. That's going to take out about 250 kilograms of dry matter requirement, which is going to, and again, with the fertilizer pushing on grass growth, and then with the drop of requirement, we're going to just tip that balance, hopefully, to build that farm cover that we need. It's all a bit of a scientific nonsense, to be honest. It's a lot of to-ing and fro-in, hoping and wishing, finger crossing, and then just saying, we knew what we were doing when it all goes right. But one thing we've got to be careful of is not using too much hay out with the cows this year, because last year we had hay to use out, bale and roll in, which is what we'd normally want, and then we'd have feed to use in, but we don't have excess hay to use inside, and we're going to have to bulk up feed ration with straw, but ideally not use straw too much outside, because it's just not the best when you unroll it, because they don't really pick on it if they can help it. So we're just going to have to try and create that balance. We'll probably have to bring cattle in earlier than normal so that we can give them the straw to push the feed out to get them through the winter. So it'd actually be slightly more expensive housing for the winter, because they'd be housed for slightly longer, but it would mean that we wouldn't have to buy feed. It's a bit complicated, but I think you might be able to understand what I'm on about. You probably don't. I don't know what I'm on about half time.
And before long, it was time for Dad to have a go at baling this fat hen. And after a couple of teething issues, he was absolutely flying. And 88 bales later, we got some more bedding to help us get through the winter. And a herbal lay that didn't actually look too bad. Until next time, Baldy's Farm, over and out.